backups. So we're talking about backing up. We're going to go into here and take a look at, backup and restore. 01, right? Yeah, backup and restore for Windows 11. But Windows 11 backup and restore can back up to an external device. It can back up to a network share. It can back up to a portable hard drive. Well, we don't have a portable hard drive, and I'm not going to get one for everybody in the class. So what we're going to do is add an extra drive to this. Because my main desktop at home, I have a 1 or 2 terabyte regular like NVMe chip, an M2 chip type. And I have a 4 terabyte mechanical drive to store like videos and things that if it gets wiped out, I don't care. You know, just oddball things and an extra backup of stuff. So to do this, I said start up your Windows 11. Well, I kind of got ahead of myself, didn't I? With virtual machines, you can't add a hard drive on the fly. You can change network settings, but this is a hardware thing. Like we're taking apart the computer and putting in something new. So we have to shut it down. I know. I said one thing and then we have to do something else. And hopefully it's not going to do Windows updates. Anyway, we can get to the manager part. Where'd my manager go? Well, there he is. So we want to go into the settings of our Windows 11. You can click here or right click and go to settings. This is like buying and installing new hardware on a virtual machine. And all virtual machine things have these sorts of settings in them. We are going to go down to storage. Right now we have one main hard drive. We have an empty DVD drive, which nobody has on their computers anymore, right? Nobody has them. We can add, there, we're going to add an attachment. An attachment just means we're going to add a device. And we're going to add a second hard disk. Because when you're doing an image, meaning the entire computer, and you can put it back exactly the way it was at that point in time, you can't do an image on the machine that's being imaged. Imaging is also something that like forensic cybersecurity people do. They image the machine, including what's in memory, so they can look at it and poke at it at leisure and find all the bad things you've been doing or whatever. So we are going to create a disk image file. And we'll just leave it at that because most virtual machines only allocate enough room on the drive as is needed. So you're not going to add an 80 gigabyte drive to your machine. It'll just expand as much as necessary. If performance was an issue, you would pre-allocate, but performance is not an issue for us. So we go ahead and click finish. And now it's not attached anywhere. It's like we just bought it from Amazon. We bought a new SSD drive. Here's one somebody pulled out of one of the computers yesterday. We're working on Inaccio's computer. You just bought this. Of course, you're not going to buy one like this unless you have a very old computer. This was the transition between mechanical hard drives. This is an SSD drive in the shape of a mechanical drive. And pretty much everything now has the little M2 chips in it. This was a transition device. And it's a whole 250 gigabytes. So boy, this is really worth like probably nothing at all. That's why I have a bunch of them that IT gave me for, looking at things. So we want to attach this. We want to choose it. And now we have put in a second hard drive. And then we click OK. Now that hard drive is blank. We just bought it from Amazon or wherever, Newegg, and it's wiped completely clean. It's just came from the manufacturer. So when we start up the computer is going to recognize that there's a drive there, but we won't be able to do anything with it until we do a couple of things. And this may or may not be in the lab. If you do exactly what I'm doing on the screen, you may not fulfill the lab. I am going through extra stuff and additional things. Walking you through a lab is not really what I intend to do with most of what I'm doing. The labs are for you to do. I'm going through the concepts and showing you where things are. It's like when I do programs, I'm not necessarily walking you through the solution. I'm talking about the concept so you can solve the problem. Because I don't want to have to be there to solve your problems. I want you to be able to do that. Because I already know how to do that. No, every time I solve a problem, I learn something new. So there's always something. Do you know how many times during a year I say, never saw that before? At least once a day, I think, if not more. Because there's always something. All right, so I'm going to log in as me, PASSWORD01. And then, I don't know, I don't think this is in the tutorial, but we're going to look at it just to see. Some laptops and some desktops will have room for more than one M2 drive. Not all, but some do. Some will have room for one M2 drive and like maybe some of these drives. More common is getting like 2 slots for a M2, not these little guys, but the bigger ones. Actually, these guys have room for an M2 and one of these. So if you don't need high-speed storage, these things are not as expensive as they used to be. You can then have 2 drives in one of these little guys. You would put your operating system on the very fast one, and then documents and things that don't have to be accessed that fast on the slower drive. And that's not uncommon for a gaming machine to have a really fast drive for your operating system, and then you have all your assets and things on the secondary drive because you want your operating system to run really, really fast. But many of the games don't require that fast of access. So it's not uncommon for a gaming machine. Well, is everybody logged in? If you're not, let me know. All right, so when you right-click on the Start button, you get Computer Management. There are separate things we can do to do this. Computer Management puts them all together like there is a Disk Management all by itself. I'm going into here just so we can see some of the other things that are in there. As it's buzzing and whirring. There we go. Now, if you are on a computer of your own that has Windows Home on it, you're not going to have this part. You're not going to have local users and groups. Enterprise evaluation is designed for a business, so you have a few extra features in an evaluation copy, or if your computer has Windows 11 Pro. At the college, we have Windows 11 Education. Many big businesses have Windows 11 Enterprise. Windows 11 Pro, you have to install one at a time. Windows 11 Education, which is the education version of Enterprise, means I can deploy the whole room with an image. So that operating system is designed for multiple deployments, where if I had a Windows 11 Pro here, I'd probably have to sit down at each machine. And Windows 11 Home would not allow me to manage the room from a server. So each version of the operating system has a different purpose. For Windows, for your home use and your student use, Windows Home is perfectly fine. When do you need to connect to a domain controller? You don't. You just need a standalone computer. We are going down to disk management. What this does is looks through and says, oh, it says, oh, there's a new drive. I don't know what to do with this. What should I do? Well, every disk that you add to your machine as a like permanent kind of a disk, you have to initialize. Most of the stuff we buy is already pre-initialized. Like the USB drives are already initialized and they're good to go. If you buy a new M2 drive or one of these, it's just blank from the factory. There's nothing on it. So what we're doing here is we're putting a partition table, like a table of contents, that allows your computer operating system to find things on the drive. Otherwise, it's just an empty blank piece of paper and it doesn't know what to do with it. But what is this thing? So this puts a stamp on it that says, oh, this is disk 1. And that's all it does. It identifies it. So we click OK. And then it comes up and says, oh, we have disk 1. It's online, but it's unallocated. So now we have identified our piece of paper, but we need to put lines on it so that we can write on it. So we bought unruled paper. We need to put some lines on it so that we can write. So how you put lines on it is we first have to say, oh, I need to like put a little fence around it so that things don't fall out. If I write something on here without a fence, it's going to fall to the floor. The chickens are all going to escape. So we're going to create a volume and it's going to use the whole drive. That's fine. And you can't have anything have the same drive letters. So we have D for our DVD drive. So the next one available is E. These two you could use, but rarely people use these because they were at one point reserved for the different types of floppy disks. So commonly we go higher, which is why it picks automatically E. So if you add in a USB drive, it might be E in your computer. It might be D. It might be F. A USB drive, when you insert it, it picks the next available drive letter automatically. Whatever, if you have two USB drives, one might be D and the other might be E, whichever one you plugged in first. But then after you've plugged it in and it's called E, the next time you plug it in, even if you don't have another drive, it's going to remember it, that it was on E. Yeah, I don't need to turn on Windows backup here. OneDrive is trying to help me. So we click next. NTFS is the type of lines that we're writing on our storage and how we're going to store the information, how we're going to store the files. And there are various theories about where the name came from because NTFS has been around for a while. We'll stick with New Technology File System, although this goes back to like right after MS-DOS. Anybody heard of MS-DOS before?
Yeah.
DOS, disk operating system. That was way back in the days when there were no graphical interfaces. It was all command line stuff. Ooh, that was fun. So we don't need to change this. If you look at your USB drive and you right click on your USB drive, mine's different. You'll find by right clicking on it, going to properties, that it'll tell you the file system. I set mine to NTFS specifically so I could have bigger files fit on it. But most of your USB drives are going to be FAT32. Or what's the other one? exFAT. Does anybody have you looked at your drive to see what you have? Anybody have a USB drive stuck in?
Mine's FAT32.
That's very common.
Is that file allocating table?
File allocation table. That's like the original thing Microsoft did to allocate spots on the drive to store things. So what that looks like visually is, and let's just type in file allocation table. We should be able to find a picture. I like it better when it's circular, but
So that
yeah, let's see a circle.
so that portable drive of
Owen's probably have NTFS.
exFAT?
NTFS or exFAT. NTFS isn't, you're right, typically NTFS isn't used on portable drives because it has more overhead, but you can use NTFS on it. An advantage of NTFS and extended file allocation table is you can get bigger files. I can't remember exactly the
Oh
limits
yeah,
of
there was one
everything.
that was better used for like movies or videos files and stuff like that.
What's that?
There was one that was better used for audio and video files, I guess.
The main difference between FAT32 and exFAT is how big.
Okay.
FAT32 has a limit. So this is what your drive looks like. Here's all the lines that we're going to write on our drive. Well, they're actually little squares, aren't they? So each file, a small file may take up 1 square. A big file may take 5 or 6 squares. So when things are stored, and it works the same way on every drive we have, whether it's mechanical or SSD or USB, they still have some sort of a break it out into little pieces and store. If you have a big giant file, like if you have a movie, the movie might take up all of these because movies are really big. So that's the lines that things get stored in. And depending on the type of file system you have, these little guys may be bigger or smaller. So if we go back here, it says allocation unit size. Well, each of those little boxes can be different sizes. If each of them is 2 MB and we're storing 2 KB files, we're wasting a lot of space. If we have too small of one, we have to use a lot of the little bricks and it takes longer to find it. I think by default, NTFS does 512. If you have a 20 GB file, it's just going to use a lot of 512 blocks. And SSDs are very fast, so it doesn't matter. We're going to perform a quick format because we don't need to check for errors on this particular thing. I'm going to call this backup because this is my backup drive. Click next and finish, and it'll say formatting, and then it'll be done pretty quick. And now we have 2 drives. If we close this and go to File Explorer, and this PC, and there it is. We have a second drive. Well, in our case, this is our way to emulate having an external drive to make an image of our operating system onto this, so that if our computer dies and we go into the recovery console, which we were doing the other day with that laptop, there's a spot in there that says restore system image. So if we'd have had a system image of that laptop, we could have put it right back on. But typically it's going to be stored on an external drive of some sort. Quite often a bigger one like this, but now we have 1 and 2 terabyte thumb drives. That'd work fine, it's just going to take longer. So we're not going to use this directly, but we do need it for our backup and restore guy. So the control panel. Microsoft, over the last, I don't know how long, since Windows 8, has taken, Windows 8's been a while, right? So they're gradually migrating everything out of the control panel to settings. So eventually, control panel is going to disappear, but it hasn't disappeared yet. And there are some things that are duplicates between here and the settings, and there's some things that you can't get to in the control panel anymore that are only in the settings. So they're just taking their time. But we do have backup and restore. There's also file history thing, which is kind of handy. It's kind of like a synchronize as you work to an external USB drive. I think we had a lab on that at some point. If not, we're going to, because that's another way to make automatic backups of stuff you're working on your computer with. This one can do backups and you can schedule it. Plus it can do an entire image of your machine. You can bring it back to exactly the way it was before. Has anybody ever had to wipe out and restore their machine from scratch? Is that painful? Yeah. You have to install all your programs. Hopefully you backed up your data. Yeah, because I've got, I don't know how many programs in my computer. I have everything set up the way I want. I don't want to have to go through and do all that again. So this is one way to not do that. I've used this actually with businesses and automated it so they have a little backup of their like 3 or 4 computers. So there's a couple different things we can do here. We can just create a system image onto our drive. But then all you can do with that is restore the entire computer. That doesn't give us a backup where we can pick one file to bring it back. A system repair disk is very similar to an installation disk, but all it does is boot you up into the recovery environment. When you install Windows, I don't know if you noticed, but one of the things that you see on the first screen is, it used to be recovery options. I don't know if it's there anymore. Yeah, I think it's gone. Yeah, it used to be there. So this will allow us to boot from that, and then from this, we can boot up and restore our files. As long as, and you can do the same thing if you just have an installation USB. You can use that to get into the recovery environment, which we were in there the other day with the laptop when we were working on Kenny's laptop. We were in the recovery environment. Whenever you see all those little buttons that we were clicking on, that's considered the recovery environment, meaning you're trying to fix something and you can't get Windows to load right. That's where you go. Now this is our backup destination. So we set up the backup. And actually, this is very similar to server backup. There's a built-in backup for servers for Windows. And right now I don't have anything being backed up because we're in my system admin class is in the middle of putting another server into service and then taking another one out. But then once that's done, I'm going to set up a server backup to an external hard drive. And so I have things backed up. If everything died on my servers back there, it's not a big deal because they're all pretty vanilla, meaning I've done very little customization to them. And the odds of all of them failing at one time, it'd have to be a catastrophic event where actually it could be because there it is. They have a sprinkler in there. So if the sprinklers go off, I'm not sure they would be, because I asked the guy when he was putting them in, I said, well, how much pressure it has? He says, well, you don't want to be standing underneath it. He says it's like really comes down out very, very fast. I don't know if anybody has ever been in okay, he says, yeah, you can't protect yourself. It just drowns you. Not drowns you, but I mean, it's a lot. So we're going to back up to our E drive, right? That's the one that we just made, which could be your little portable drive that you bought or not. For $40 on Temu. So we click next. If you let Windows choose what you want to back up, it may not pick the things where you're storing your information. And I never choose any default settings. I always go in and make sure it's doing what I want it to do. So I am going to choose. Next. Well, now we need to figure out where things are. We could go here. Well, we have the documents, but I don't need to back up my music or videos, but I do want my pictures. And then there's a bunch, oh yes, I do need my desktop, but I really don't need anything else because I have a bunch of files stored on my desktop. My downloads folder, I never keep anything in there. I always keep that cleaned out. I store it where it's supposed to be. You may have stuff in the downloads folder you may want to back up. So you can go through and choose things. You can also go through and pick things out of the drive. Like if you have a folder here that says my favorite videos, you could, back that up. So you can pick and choose. That's separate from a system image of the entire drive. With a system image, all you can do is restore the entire computer back the way it was. You can't pick separate files. So that's why this kind of has both. Some online backup systems will back up your computer that you can restore an entire image of your machine back. And then we're not going to do that because, that's just going to take too much room. And there's nothing on my computer, so this isn't going to take very long. We click next. We can have it scheduled. The only disadvantage is you have to have it like every day. You can't skip days. You can't have multiple times, but no, it works. So if we save settings, it's going to run the backup. There it goes. And it'll buzz and whir and do stuff, and eventually it'll finish. Eventually. But I'm not going to finish it because we need to look at batch files and stuff. So anyway, there's also a part where you restore it. Can I stop it?
How quickly, yeah, I don't know.
I'm guessing view details, I can stop it because, yeah, stop backup. I really don't need to finish it. We're going to look at batch files and command prompts because that's a whole other